Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About Comics. My name is Peyton.
I am Spencer.
And on this show we talk about all sorts of things nerd. We talk about comics, video games, movies, shitty comics.
All of the above.
All of the above. So on this episode, we're actually happening to talk about one of the shittiest comic book movies. It's recognized as one of the shittiest. In reality, it's like mid and shitty, but like mid mainly.
I'll say this. It's not good. It's not good. But I've seen worse comic book movies, without a doubt.
Yeah. And then we're also going to be talking about the Green Lantern movie prequels comic. I actually picked that up at a store down the street. It was only $3.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I caught that one for a bargain. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get into the movie talk first. Of course, we're going to be talking about Green Lantern from 2011. The director being Martin Campbell. Written by Greg Berlanti, Michael Goldenberg, Michael Green, and Mark Guggenheim. Spencer, I know you're a little bit more familiar with Greg Berlanti. Do you want to comment on his body of work?
Yeah, I mean, he's done a lot of stuff, mostly known for his stuff with the CW. He did Riverdale and a ton of the Arrowverse stuff. He was one of the main... I think he actually was the creator and lead writer of Arrow at the beginning, and if he wasn't a writer or co-creator, he was an executive producer for pretty much everything in the Arrowverse. And he's slowly been making his way up there. There's been rumors that he's going to be DC's new figurehead. But either way, he's got a pretty long track record dating back to, I think, this movie. I think this might be the earliest DC property he worked on.
Really?
I think so.
Well, honestly, as far as the writing goes, I don't think any of it was too awful. The plot itself isn't, terrible.
I think it's an inoffensive plot.
Exactly.
It's just...
There's lots of bits that needed to be expanded, and there's lots of bits that needed to be...
cut out.
Yes.
Like, it just feels like for a lot of the movie, they were focusing on the wrong things. So, to preface this, you are actually a reader of Green Lantern comics. I am not. There's a few parts of Marvel and DC that I don't really go too deep into, that being the Green Lantern stuff, like all the Lantern Corps, and all the different X-Men stuff for Marvel.
Yeah.
And you are a reader of both of those. So, I went into this movie looking at it more of, okay, I just want to see what story they're going to tell, because I do know, like, the basics, obviously, just because I haven't read much Green Lantern solo stuff. I've read a little bit and seen him in other things, so I know the character. I just wanted to see, how they told the story, especially how Ryan Reynolds was as Hal Jordan. I have seen this movie one other time before. It was the year it came out. So I was 9 years old.
God damn.
Yeah. And
fucking post 9/11 babies, you crazy.
Yeah, I watched it on my cousin's couch, and his dad kept yelling at me because I was on my phone. So,
I mean, it's kind of a boring movie.
I've never been a big Green Lantern fan, so even as a kid, I was like, superhero I don't really care about.
Yeah.
I'll play Diner Dash instead on my Pantech.
Yeah. Like, I know I said that the plot wasn't too terrible, but it was kind of boring.
It's not. It's slow. I think it is boring, and I think that's because for a lot of the movie, they focus on stuff that, frankly, the audience doesn't give a shit about.
Exactly.
And they leave out all the stuff that's actually cool and important and fleshes out the important parts. And they stuffed half of that into the prequel comics.
Oh, yeah.
And the rest probably just never got made.
So, I want to touch on something as, like, a Green Lantern fan. Literally, I know that Alan Scott is not, like, a part of the Green Lantern Corps, but he is my favorite DC character, and Green Lanterns, like, as a whole are my favorite part of the DC universe. I think the strongest part of a Green Lantern story is the core itself. So when you make a movie that kind of separates Hal Jordan from the core, kind of isolates him, everybody hates him, they also make him train by himself, and then they kind of make him save the day by himself. Nobody helps him. Even the Guardians, the Guardians do absolutely nothing throughout the entirety of this thing.
Yeah, they do jack shit through the whole
traditionally, at least one of them is slightly more emotional than the others. That one is Ganthet. That is the one that gives Kyle Rayner his ring, and who also co-creates Blue Lantern Corps with Sade. Yeah, he traditionally is the voice of reason for the Guardians.
Right.
Didn't fucking happen.
Oh, no. They did not. I know, that's part of their thing is they don't interfere. But even to the plot, they barely had relevance. They did nothing for this movie.
Yeah,
they were just so underused and improperly used.
Yeah, and I wonder if Jeff Johns consulted on this movie.
He did, I believe.
Okay, so that's a good thing, because a lot of his Green Lantern stuff, it's kind of about how the Guardians have their own agenda, and a lot of the stuff that they feed the Green Lantern Corps is propaganda and just false histories.
That doesn't surprise me, really. They've always kind of seemed sketchy, and I know
they call themselves the Guardians of the Universe.
And I know that, there was obviously that little post-credit scene of Sinestro becoming the Yellow Lantern. We know that they had sequels and spin-offs and stuff planned that just never panned out because it wasn't successful critically or financially. So they might have been planning to go down that route, and this movie was just kind of planting the seed for that. And unfortunately, it does kind of suck because this movie does start a lot of stuff that could go places.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it had genuine potential to be good if they did it right. Especially some of the stuff they hint at in the prequel comics, which we'll talk about later. But it's just a shame that because they focused on the wrong things in the movie, and I think, personally, I felt like the pacing was not good. And, it suffered from a few major flaws that sunk the whole ship.
Yeah, and I kind of have a hot take on it. I honestly think that if they would have just stuck with it, they could have had a universe equivalent to Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I wouldn't be mad if this low-key kickstarted a DCEU.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
because it wasn't that terrible.
That bad.
My thing is, and this has always kind of been my thing with Green Lantern stories, but this movie takes it kind of to the extreme. It's I love a lot of the concepts. I dislike a lot of the execution of those concepts. And I think this movie is kind of the perfect embodiment of that, because I think, Ryan Reynolds was a pretty good Hal Jordan. Him and Blake Lively's chemistry pretty much fucking carried this movie.
Well, yeah, they got fucking married.
Right, exactly. They met on this set and got married. They're still married today. It's crazy. And, I think Mark Strong did really good as Sinestro.
Oh, yeah.
I think, hot take here, a lot of the CGI stuff actually looked pretty good. Definitely not all of it. Some of it looked like doo-doo water, but there was some strong stuff, like the CGI, the totally CGI characters, Kilowog, Tomar Ray.
Tomar 2 is his son.
Okay.
I'm all over this shit. I fucking love Green Lantern.
I get this shit mixed up so much, but
I love it so
those two,
goddamn much.
I think they looked really good, and I think the thing that didn't look good was Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern. Because he plays a good Hal Jordan, and I don't even hate the suit. The suit doesn't bother me.
Exactly.
I actually have notes about this. I said, I like how the ring looks. I do not like how the lantern looks. I like how the suit looks. I do not like how the mask looks. So, it's for every...
Wait, you like how the ring looks?
I do.
I don't.
I think it kind of looks a little bit too much like a ring pop for me. Like, the material is like
So, can I say real
gelatin
quick?
almost looking. I know it was meant to be more like emerald crystal. That could have been executed better, but I think the overall design and shit looked pretty nice. The lantern just looked weird.
Yeah, I wrote, the ring looks too much like a device. So in the comics, it's basically like when you get a ring, it's kind of unique to you.
Okay.
Kind
that makes sense.
So it either, changes to you or the ring just looks different.
Yeah.
Hal's ring always looks different because, he creates it. At one point, he basically pulls an Alan Scott and creates his own lantern.
Oh.
Yeah, and then he creates his own ring from that. And then I'm pretty sure everybody else's rings look different.
I see where you're coming from, though, with the ring. I don't know. Did all the rings have the same model design?
It looked like it.
Yeah, that's what I thought, too. They did all pretty much look identical.
Yeah, I get because you only want to build the one model.
Right.
And then just map that onto everything you can.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I get it.
The one character I'm surprised that we didn't see, at least I didn't catch him, is Salak.
He was in there.
He was?
He was. There's actually a little bit in the prequel graphic novel.
Because I see him in the... Yeah, I saw him in the prequel.
Well, yeah, he's in the prequels as well, but if you... Yeah. But there are many other fan-favorite alien corpsmen sprinkled throughout. See if you can spot some of these fearless lanterns in the film.
Oh, fuck, really? I did not catch that.
Yeah, hold on. There's Boudica, one of the fiercest warriors. Buzzed, the smallest and boldest. BZZD.
Oh, fuck. Is that either the Wasp or...
Probably.
That might be the Squirrel.
Hanu, the lantern who would prefer to use his fist before the ring. Larvox, friendly insectoid.
No, that one's the Wasp. Hanno is the big rock one. He's like a colonel or a captain or something like that.
Green Man, the most dedicated and loyal. Medphil, the experienced veteran plant life form. Mora, the caretaker of the crypts.
Yeah.
Raimi Hole, the recent majestic recruit. Rot Lot Fan, an enigma. Salak, the ultimate multitasker.
Yeah.
Stel, the battle-driven sentient robot. And Vaz, the no-nonsense warden of the science cells.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it listed those little Easter eggs.
Crypt one is like a giant hairy guy, I think. That or he's like a weird snake-looking guy in robes. I can't remember which.
In the background of a few scenes, you can see some like really weird-looking character models. So I assume it's probably some of those.
Yeah, I really liked a lot of the character models. It looked really, really good. I mean,
Kilowog especially, I think, was my favorite.
The main effect that I had an issue with was the more like wispy construct effects, like the flying whatever that was.
Yeah,
looked awful.
Yeah, that was. I have a note. Hold on. That green flying ball sucks. Stock electricity sound effects don't help. Do you remember that moment where right before? Because I'm pretty sure in the comics he stumbles upon Abensur or Abensur crashes near him and he gets the ring that way.
Yeah.
But in the movie, Abensur crashes. This weird green bubble forms around Hal with this like stock like buzzing sound effect. It then flies him to a random location where then he finds Abensur's corpse and then gets the ring.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just the regular origin story with extra steps. Why'd you do that? And it didn't look good and it didn't sound good. So what the hell?
So here's my big issue with Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan.
You would know this. See, this is one of those things where you know better than I do, because especially out of the Green Lantern stuff I do consume, Hal Jordan, not my favorite. I'm gonna be honest.
He's alright.
So I don't read or
He's
watch.
The most boring of the Lanterns.
That's fair,
in my opinion. So Ryan Reynolds has the part down like 100%. The only issue is it takes him way too long to accept the ring in the movie. A. And B, he just doesn't look the part.
Yeah.
You know, in my eyes,
he
Hal
looks
Jordan,
good in some of like the promo material.
He's too like, I don't know, tall and slender.
Yeah.
You know, I imagine
Hal Jordan's usually more like stocky, right?
Yeah. That's kind of what I picture, kind of like a broad shoulder kind of guy. And that's always who I've envisioned as playing him is you know, Nathan Fillion looking person.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
Nathan Fillion even voiced him in a lot of the Flashpoint era animated films, I think. Gotcha. Or maybe even Justice League War specifically.
Oh, okay. Love that movie.
Yeah, it was one of my favorites.
But I think overall, from what I know, from my limited knowledge of the character, they didn't do too terrible. Although one of my notes I asked, is Hal Jordan usually this much of a fuckboy?
Yes. So, yes and no. Carol and Hal have this kind of like doomed relationship type beat. And, you know, it kind of starts when he becomes Green Lantern, and so he's kind of busy, you know, not only saving the world, but saving the universe, saving the sector, you know, saving all sorts of things, and spending his time off-world.
Because he's got a whole lot of shit to protect, a whole lot of ground to cover. A
lot of responsibilities, and she's busy with Ferris Industries, or Ferris Air, or whatever it is.
Yeah, Ferris Aircraft.
Yeah. And, so even when he is on Earth, they're not necessarily spending time together.
Yeah.
And then she becomes a Star Sapphire, and then she kind of becomes his enemy. She kind of gets taken over by the power of the ring and becomes an enemy of Green Lantern for a while.
Oh, okay.
And then after she kind of gets control of that, she has her own responsibilities being a Star Sapphire.
Right.
With, like, reforming her core to kind of take over, helping guard the galaxy, and guard the universe as a whole. Kind of do the same thing that the Green Lantern Corps do, just on a different scale.
Right.
And so they never really end up as a couple.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Batman and Catwoman, except way more on and off again.
Okay.
Considering they, you know, never got married. Probably never will.
You know, I think that's one thing I did think about while we were watching the movie is I know they had to have had it planned for a sequel, but I think Blake Lively as Star Sapphire would have been fucking awesome to see.
I'm surprised they didn't
even if they do like a dumbass CGI suit like they did. I feel like it still would have been cool to see.
I'm surprised they didn't do something in like a post-credit scene or like in that final bit where they talk, like he flies off.
I low-key expected him to.
Yeah. He flies off and then a ring comes down to her.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Because like I said, I've technically seen this movie once before, but it was so long ago and I was really young, so this was pretty much like a first watch for me. But yeah, I did kind of expect a Star Sapphire tease. The closest thing we got was her tag being Sapphire as a pilot, but I don't know if that's a thing from the comics or if that was like a reference.
I can't remember.
Not.
I'm pretty sure Highball is from the comics.
Okay.
I do vaguely remember that being a thing.
Okay.
Another thing, a few things that's from the comics that I kind of want to touch on is Ryut was featured at the beginning of...
Okay, is it Ryut or Riot?
It's... I've always called it Ryut.
Okay, because it sounded like
a little bit better. Not gonna lie.
Because it sounded like he said, it sounded like he said Riot in the beginning, and then you were like, "It's the planet Atrocitus is from." I'm like, "Oh, the anger guy's from the planet called Riot." Of fucking course.
Yeah, that do sound a little bit better than Ryut, but yeah. So Riot is the planet that Atrocitus is from.
Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to cover from like kind of the beginning of the movie was, and I'm surprised they never say the name, but I don't know if it was because they had plans for this character in New 52, which they did. They did use the character a bunch, but I have a feeling that he was in continuity prior to Flashpoint. So I can't really remember. It all kind of blends together for me after all this time.
Yeah, they've been rebooted so much, it's hard to keep track of which happened in which timeline.
But I want to say that the character's name is like Kronos or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, let me look it up real quick, just to make sure. I don't want to sound stupid, even though I always do. Krona. See, I was close.
You were almost there.
I was close.
Kronos is the time guide. You were close.
Yeah, so Krona is one of the... he was a guardian of the universe, and he kind of separated from them. And I did point out to you that there was a broken chair.
You did.
And that there was a missing guardian, and that Parallax probably took control of a guardian.
Yeah, and then immediately, like, 2 scenes later, they were like, and one of our guardians has been possessed by Parallax, the entity of fear. And I'm like, you fucking nerd.
Yeah, because I'm like, it's exactly what happens, kinda, not exactly, but kind of what happens
Similar
in
to
the
what
comics.
Happens. Okay.
But yeah, I'm surprised they never say the name.
Yeah, they didn't say the name of any of the Guardians, I don't think.
No, they didn't.
Not that I can remember, at least.
Yeah, I
also think
they
they
kind
kind
of
of
if they did in the comic either.
I don't remember. I don't think so. But I think they also kind of looked like shit.
They looked like washed up jellyfish.
They looked shriveled.
Yeah, I mean,
and like muted. And usually in the comics they're this like bright, intense blue.
So I kind of get what they were going for.
I do too, because they're supposed to be like old ass men.
Yeah, so they're supposed to be shriveled up because they were humanoid, like fully humanoid, like you and I size.
Okay.
Except like slightly shorter.
Yeah.
And because they've lived so long, their bodies have essentially shriveled up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get what they were going for, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it looked good.
Right. I said, there's concepts there that I really like. They just weren't executed that well.
Yeah. If you're watching the video on YouTube right now, go ahead and throw up a picture of the like round-headed guy from the comics, and then throw up a picture of him from the prequel comic.
Okay.
Because fuck, they over-design things. Talk about the MCU over-designing things. This movie over-designs things.
This movie over-designed the shit out of a lot of things.
Oh yeah, like Oa is completely over-designed. One thing I wanted to talk about...
It looks fucking pretty, though. That's one of my notes, is some of the landscape shots look really nice.
It does look pretty, but I also... Oa should be yellow. Oa is always yellow.
That's weird.
Exactly. There's a reason. Because it's part of the Guardians, like, agenda. They even start this movie with, like, a whole Guardians... propaganda, like,
yeah, I did want to ask you
thing.
about that, because I put down, it was actually my first note, I said, simple, straightforward, and comprehensive narrated intro. I think it was dumbed down enough to be palatable. I think it established what you need before the movie, and in fact, like, I'll talk about more when we get to the comic talk, but there's stuff from the prequel comics I feel like should have been integrated into this narration.
Oh yeah.
To make it a little bit more comprehensive, and that all kind of goes back to, like I said, focusing kind of on the wrong things in a lot of parts, but overall, I think setting a foundation, it does its job okay, but you are more well versed in the lore and such, and the intricacies of it.
Yeah, so it's a great intro, but it's all a lie. So,
alright.
Oa has always been around. Green Lanterns were not the first thing that they ever created. It was a crystal that they harnessed. They actually had the Manhunters at first, and they didn't just try to harness Will. They tried to harness all of them, and then Will was the only one that ended up working in their favor. And they gave up their emotions to...
Like, they gave up the other emotions to focus.
Well, they gave up all of their emotions.
Oh,
yeah,
like completely?
all of their emotions completely to better be able to police the universe.
To be more objective or whatever.
To be more objective. And that's, kind of made them more cold and calculative.
Yeah.
Like,
that's why even in the movie, the one says, when Hal says, "Help me save my people," they're like, we have to look at things on a much bigger scale.
Yeah, because they're immortal.
Over billions of years, and for, multiple galaxies, not just a single planet in a single solar system in a single galaxy.
Yeah,
if that's not going to impact anything in the grand scheme of things, they're not really going to stick their hands into it.
And one thing that kind of like proves my point about the false histories is they even talk about, should we try to harness the one energy we swore we never would?
Yeah,
they talk about fear. they never in the intro mention trying to harness the other energies. They say that they harness the power of will.
That's true.
They never once talk about...
Yeah, they didn't mention them trying to harness the other ones.
Exactly. So it's a false history that they are pushing.
I feel like it's another thing in potential sequels they were thinking. They probably would have brought in the other colors a lot more. Because this one was essentially just green.
Yeah.
And then yellow at the end, so I feel like if they continued, we would have had yellow with the Sinestro Corps. We would have had red because they have already introduced Riot, and probably... the Star Sapphire Corps.
I was also thinking potentially the Indigo Tribe, because Abin Sur created the Indigo Tribe in secret from the Guardians because he obviously distrusted them.
Right.
They're,
sketchy as hell.
Motherfuckers.
Yeah.
So he basically created it as like a prison tribe. So the worst of the worst were sent there.
Oh, so Australia.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's kind of that.
Fuck yeah. Space Australia.
Hence why they're kind of based off the Aboriginals of Australia.
Oh, okay.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they did introduce an Orange Lantern later down the line.
Yeah.
When they were planning to do sequels.
Right.
That would have been like a side kind of quest.
I think honestly, as much as I dislike a lot of this movie, I think, like I said, there are some great ideas, and I feel like if they had pushed through and done more, and done a sequel, even just one more movie, like, if that one flopped, kill it, sure. But I feel like they should have done a sequel. Because I feel like I would love to see Ryan Reynolds, Hal Jordan against Mark Strong Sinestro. I feel like that would just be fun. It'd be cool to see. Are they, the perfect end-all be-all castings? Hell no. Other people can do both roles, I think. They've both went on to play other characters as well. Yeah. Mark Strong was Dr. Sivana in Shazam, and then Ryan Reynolds obviously went on to do Deadpool.
Still is doing Deadpool.
Exactly. So, obviously, those bridges have burned, but I do enjoy thinking about what could have been, because despite a lot of the comic inaccuracies and bad execution on certain ideas, I think they laid a decent foundation that they could have expanded pretty well.
I mean, Amanda Waller was in it.
Yeah, fucking... Also, that's one thing I didn't even catch originally until it showed Hector, reading her mind.
Really?
Yeah, because, I heard the name Waller, and...
She said it at the beginning of the movie. That's when I wrote it down, was Dr. Amanda Waller.
Did they say her full name? Okay,
She said Dr. Amanda Waller.
I wasn't paying that much damn attention, bro. I just heard a Waller,
I did
was
audibly say that.
I was just like, oh, as in Amanda, and then they just never talk about it again, so, until that moment. So, it was kind of weird.
Very weird.
Once again, another thing where I'm like, is that a thread they had planned to do? Was that meant to be a seed planted? I don't know. Or was that just a weird reference?
Don't fucking know.
I don't know. I don't really give a shit.
Yeah.
Although, I will say, this actress, I can't remember her name, but the actress who does Amanda Waller in this movie, I will say, is probably better than the actress who plays Amanda Waller in the Arrowverse.
Yeah.
Personally. Obviously, no one does it like Viola Davis. She kills that shit.
Oh, yeah.
But I think this is probably a close second.
Yeah, a lot of the characterizations aren't awful. I think the choice of character is what kills this movie. Well, not only the choice of characters, but the lack of expanding on certain parts, like we've been saying.
Certain characters, yeah.
So Hector is just a character that never needs to be used. Ever.
No, he was fucking dog shit. Oh,
yeah.
Dude, okay.
He's dog shit in the comics, too. He's always the worst. I hate Hector.
They had a little mini article about him in the Green Lantern prequel comic, and I read that, and it was Jeff Johns talking about how this dude's performance as Hector Hammond was elevated to the next level, and they were put in stunned silence at how great it was and how accurate it was to the comics. And
it's very accurate.
And I watched it, and I was like, this is fucking dog shit.
Oh yeah,
I understand. And this is no hate or anything negative towards the actor, because for what the actor was given, he probably did wonderful. Because there's a lot of points where he does this maniacal laugh, which isn't terrible. He does this like weird blood-curdling scream, which is actually kind of impressive. And I feel like it would have worked if they did, but they just overdid it. They focused on him. At one point, it becomes his movie for like half an hour, and it is painstaking. I literally wrote, "Please stop focusing on Hector. He sucks ass."
Really? There's no fucking way.
And hold on.
Yeah, so none of what Jeff Johns is a lie.
Hector and his dad suck. Why are they in this movie? How was Hector infected by parallax if it's possessing one of the Guardians? I learned later they explained that it's like a virus.
Yeah, it did
for a while.
It stabbed him while he was inside Abin-Sur. Did you not see that?
No, I did, but they never elaborate on that. It's just a flicker of yellow on the dude's finger, and then he's evil. So I'm like, okay, is he possessed? Is it like infection? Like, how does this work? And they don't explain that until, an hour into the movie.
In the comics, I think he just has like bio enhancements to his mind or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And then he gets like an orange lantern.
He's turned into a telepath, is what the one thing said. And they were talking about how good the makeup was, and I'll be honest, the makeup was done well, but also looked terrible, which was the point. Weird. Like, I know the point was to make him look as ugly as possible. Yeah. But I don't think that they really landed it very well. I think it just ends up kind of looking like a mess.
Yeah, I don't think they should have used that character.
No, every second Hector is on screen was agonizing.
It's agonizing. I think that they should have added more recruits to the training montage. I think they should have made the training montage longer. I think that they should have added those same recruits that they, needed to add in the training area into the final fight. Yeah. Like Tomar 2, and I think even Sinestro's daughter. Yeah. So Sora Natu. Having her be there too would be great.
Even if it was the recruits that they introduced in the prequel comics that weren't in the movie, I think one of the recruits has an actual role in the movie, but none of the other ones really do. And so I feel like those were underutilized. You could have introduced them. And also in the prequel comics, there's a lot more elaboration on Tomar Ray, on Kilowog, and on Sinestro. And those characters were some of the highlights of this movie. So if you had taken out a lot of those, extraneous scenes and stuff with Hector that didn't really matter and replaced it with stuff that you shoved into the prequel comic, like actual character development. Yeah. Because in the prequel comics, we'll talk about it more in a second, but it goes deeper into their relationships with each other, how the Corps functions kind of as like a brotherhood almost. Yeah. And, why they respected Abin-Sur so much. And I feel like all of that stuff would have been way better in the movie than what we got.
Yeah, I feel like you've already mentioned it once. There was a pacing issue, a massive pacing issue 100%. In terms of where
probably this movie's one of this movie's biggest flaws.
Exactly. And
besides some of the god-awful CGI.
I did tell you before we watched it, it's very hard to fuck up a Green Lantern story. Yeah. And again, the plot is alright. Yeah. But,
I don't think the writing of this movie was that terrible. Yeah. Because I'm sure when you look at, the full script, it's probably well-paced. But, as things go through shooting and editing, stuff gets cut out, stuff gets changed. And so sometimes the final product isn't as well paced as you'd want it to be, or as it was meant to be.
And that's why I'm glad that we're getting a show, because I think that it's going to work a lot better as, maybe even a multi-season project.
Yeah, they said if it's successful, that could definitely happen.
I really hope, I really hope that's the case.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that show in future talk.
Maybe even something that's, potentially in the Reeves verse. I get that that's controversial. I really do.
I don't give a shit. They're so far removed from each other. If you want to say it's Reeves' verse, it's not going to affect anything in the Batman 2. So.
Well, if you look at Earth 1, a lot of the storylines in Earth 1, that kind of works with...
Don't people hate Earth 1?
I don't give a fuck if people hate Earth 1.
Well, I'm just saying they're not going to adapt something if people hate it. That's all I'm saying.
But it's realistic and it works. and that it probably would work a lot better on screen than it would in comic.
Fair.
Just for the record.
I just think them having it as a show is going to be able... They're going to be able to slow down, because a lot of Green Lantern stuff is really big, intricate concepts and characters that have slow development. So having more time to focus on those little things, that nuance, I feel like is going to help the story function better as a whole.
Yeah, this movie really didn't have a lot of focus on the willpower of a Green Lantern.
No, there was a few scenes I thought did it pretty well, but for the most part, it just wasn't a main focus.
I didn't think there was anything.
The one I'm thinking of is it might be the final fight. I think the final fight does it pretty well, because you're like, you can see that's when Hal's character arc pretty much comes full circle, and you realize, oh, he's got this shit in the bag. I thought that was done pretty well. I think Hal's character arc was done well, even if his characterization wasn't done as good. You know, he might not be the most comic accurate when it comes to like personality and looks and whatnot, but I still think in this movie, as one piece, he's still a strongly written character. And like you said, it takes him too long to accept his fear and stuff and like confront that. Like, I haven't read his origin, so that's probably 100% valid, but for this movie, I think in the grand scheme of the film, it made sense for how long it took and what they were doing. And I also think his history was established very well. I think those flashbacks in the beginning and the parallels it makes between him and his father, that honestly is probably one of the best parts of the movie, because it's very concise, but it gives you his motivation, why he does what he does. It gives his history, you know, the shit he's been through as he's like passing out and stuff, you know, from having these memories. You know, you can see that, you know, he's pretty traumatized, like he's got demons to deal with. And so that right there, you know who Hal is as a character. Yeah. And from there is when we start seeing his growth. I think from there to admitting his fear did take a while, and that could have been sped up, but I think that was less of a writing issue and again more of a editing pacing issue.
So, in my opinion, the thing that kind of shows the true willpower of a Green Lantern is long, drawn-out hollows of other past Green Lanterns doing things, or like stories of past Green Lanterns doing things. Like, my favorite...
Yeah, because they do become sort of things of legend almost.
Exactly. Like, my favorite of the Green Lantern Corps stories is when it's just like a random one-off side story of like a newer Green Lantern saving his home planet and then going back and then telling his friends about it. Right. And then it cuts back to the family that he saved, and they're having like a nice dinner. Yeah. And it's just, like, good seeing them together as a family safe. Right. And it's just this long, drawn-out example. It's honestly the perfect way to do that stuff.
Yeah. I think this plot, it just, like, it hits some good notes, but overall, I think it just falls short, and at times is difficult to keep your attention. Yeah. Like I said, my final note is, could have easily been about an hour and a half instead of an hour and 53.
Oh, yeah.
And that's with, like, just what they had, you know? That's without them implementing any of the stuff from the prequels or expanding on anything. Like, with just that movie, you could cut out, like, 15, 20 minutes of stuff that just doesn't matter. And you would probably have a better and more well-paced film.
Yeah, my final thoughts are this movie works as average all over. Yeah. Some of the wispy lantern effects were shitty. But, like, the water effect, like, the water construct was awesome.
I had a note about that. I'm like, that's the unique and creative shit I want to see in a Green Lantern project. Also, the Hot Wheels thing, while it was creative and unique, was also goofy as fuck. Exactly. There was a couple times where stuff was really cool, and then it got goofy. That, like, that whole helicopter scene, for one, that helicopter also would have killed people. But, 100%. But, like, the Hot Wheels thing, and also when Hammond sticks the thing in the dude's eye and kills him, that was badass as fuck. And he gets up, and then all of a sudden he just starts like flinging people around, and it's like, whoa, yeah, like it's the dumbest looking shit.
It scared the fuck out of me a couple times.
Had a couple like almost jump scare moments for you.
And then another one of the last thing I wanted to say is just agreeing with you. The writing is paced too odd to keep my attention.
Yeah.
5 out of 10, fucking mid.
That's fair. It's mid. I like the final fight. The final fight and I think the beginning are probably the strongest points. It has decent beginning and end, but a lot of the middle was just not done well. At least we got a proper space battle.
Yeah.
In a Green Lantern movie. Fucking took 2 hours, but we finally saw Hal Jordan actually fighting in space. And then I actually thought the dynamic between him and Sinestro was good in this movie, because I like seeing Sinestro as a Green Lantern.
Yeah.
I think he's an interesting character. He's one of the more compelling villains.
Yeah, he has his own, reasons for doing what he does.
Yes, and they actually explain that in one of the prequel comics, which we're about to talk about.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and get into the comic talk for the Green Lantern prequel comics.
Yes, sir.
The first story was A Small Unremarkable Planet, written by Michael Green, penciled by Patrick Gleason and Tony Chastain, inked by Mick Gray and Tony Chastain. Colorist is Nathan Earing. Is the Sol system in quarantine, or is it just like we're too primitive to be contacted or something like that?
Okay, basically it's a mixture of things. From what I got, it was we are young and we are primitive and stubborn. So they're like, look, this is still newly formed species. They're still fighting amongst each other. They can't contact anybody. We're going to leave them alone. Kind of like, I feel like it's almost an allegory, or at least draws a parallel in my mind to how on Earth there's still very, very few tiny places where there are like primitive tribes of human people that are still in their Stone Age and haven't had contact with other civilizations.
We just don't contact them because
we just have an agreement. Yeah, we just have an agreement. Stay away from them. Let them do their own thing. And I feel like it's kind of like that's how the aliens are with our solar system.
Yeah.
Is they're like, they're young, they're still dealing with their shit, leave them alone. We got other stuff to worry about.
And I'm curious, how did Private Waller become Dr. Waller?
There's yes, it is the first story, okay. At the very end, somebody, I don't know who it is, brings Waller into his office.
Yeah.
Is like, hey, I've got a proposition for you. And my initial reaction was Task Force X, but then I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Oh, that is how she got to where that was probably because he was like, "You're too valuable to have on the field."
Logo on the door.
Yeah, he was like, "You're too valuable to have on the field. I got something else that might interest you," and I think that's kind of how she ended up working that more corporate job that she has in the final film.
Yeah.
Also, there's a motherfucking transformer in this one.
It was a techno-organic virus.
Yeah, but I saw it and I was like, yo, motherfucking transformer? And then they were like, no, it's a disease that eats metal and grows. I'm like, that's terrifying. Still looks like a transformer.
Yeah, Abenstar was just pulling a watcher. He wasn't intervening at all.
No, he was like, is this girl really gonna shoot at this impossible thing? And it's Amanda Waller, so of course she does.
Yeah.
And then she chucks a grenade at it and Abenstar is like, huh.
It does make me wish that she kind of had a bigger role. Only kind of.
A little bit. I feel like they could have, but once again, not really necessary.
And then it just ends at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
He's crashing on Earth.
Yeah, which a few of these end right where the movie starts.
Either
which is
that
kind of
or
cool.
they're during the movie.
Yeah, there's
one of them is during the movie.
Yeah, one or two happen. Well, there's one I think with like references to it.
Yeah.
Flash forwards. We'll get to that. But for this one, I like the way it explains why humans haven't had contact with aliens. And I said, I wish the movie would have shown this to help the audience understand why Abenstar is so respected. Or, at least show him doing something.
Yeah.
But this would have at least made sense why Amanda Waller was in the movie, why Abenstar is so respected. Would have made sense better than 30 minutes of Hector fucking off doing whatever.
I think it was a fun romp on a pre-Green Lantern Earth. But let's go ahead and get into the next one. It was Forbidden Planet, written by Mark Guggenheim. Artist was Cliff Richards, and colorist was Nathan Earing. There was Salak was in this one.
I do want to say first real quick, Mark Guggenheim is one of the people that actually worked on the movie screenplay. Greg Berlanti, who worked on the screenplay, also wrote a comic for this book because there is, like, a lot of different stories. They're all just, like, really short, one issue length at max. I think there's a couple in here that are...
All of the writers have a story in this. All four of them.
Okay, that's cool. I wasn't sure if it was all of them or just
all four of them.
Couple. But, yeah. Some of the stories are even only, like, 3 or 4 pages.
Yeah, so there's...
Forbidden Planet is... There's one of the medium-length ones, I think.
3 issues. 3 full issues. And then there's 2 issues with 2 stories in them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I noticed.
2 of the stories are like 3 pages.
Yeah, okay. I saw that because, like, some of the title pages would have 1, and some of the title pages would have 2 story titles.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot that they fit into this tiny book.
They did.
For $3, I think it was kind of a steal. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of glad I picked it up.
Yeah, it's cool to have, you know? And I mean, they're not bad stories. We said before the podcast, we were like, hey, if the movie was the same quality as all the prequel comics, it might have actually been a successful movie.
Yeah.
And I stick by that because some of these were actually really well done.
And I plan to pick up more from the store.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's like Marvel Tsum Tsum Takeover or whatever.
And we also, while we were on vacation, picked up 2 movie prequel graphic novels that we'll be using for future videos. I will spoil, one of them is Superman Returns, which I'm very much looking forward to. Shout out Brandon Routh.
It's going to be weird.
But Forbidden Planet... This one kind of immediately made me excited within, like, the first couple pages, just because the battle that's the main focus of this issue takes place on Tamaran's largest moon.
Yes, I had it. There was a Tamaran mention.
Yes, I saw Tamaran. I'm like, fuck yeah.
So the Green Lanterns actually operate in Tamaran quite frequently.
That's cool. I didn't know that, but it just makes me, man, like, if they continued...
Star Sapphires as well.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah.
That would... See, it's just shit like that where I'm like, man, if they had continued with this, would we have seen, like, a Starfire movie? Or Starfire...
Star Sapphire?
No, like Starfire, like the Tamaranian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, would that have led to anything? Would that have connected to a larger universe? We'll never know.
Yeah.
All of those planes crash and burn, but...
I mean, I like how Tomar Ray turned red.
Yeah, that was cool.
Like in Rage.
Yeah.
Which he said it was because of his race, but, like, I like the idea of...
Didn't he say it was, like, something with his skin?
I think so.
Because the suits in this version are almost like their skin.
Yeah, so all of the suits are just, like, super skin-tight constructs.
Yeah.
And they're kind of textured different. It seems like you don't really have that much control over what they look like.
No, it seems almost based on your race, because, like, Tomar Ray had, like, the scaly one, Kilowog's looked almost armored at some spots. Howl's is, like, has all the different lines, almost like the human muscular pattern, you know? Which,
to be fair, in the comics, technically Guy Gardner is the first one to add style to the construct.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Because he's so independent.
Oh,
and
he's Guy Gardner.
Badass. Which I actually really enjoy Guy.
We're going to talk about him in 2 stories.
Exactly.
But for the rest of... Other than the Tamaran reference, I said Tomar Ray and Abensur have a weird friendship, but it's kind of wholesome.
Because
it's like...
I really love Tomar.
They're arguing, and they're like, hey, I have shit to do. And the other guy's like, yeah, I also got shit to do. And they're like, hey, don't die. I want to argue with you again later. And they're like, I won't. Farewell, friend. And then Abensur fucking dies. But,
yeah, I really love Tomar Ray. Tomar 2 is great as well.
It's just shit like that we should have seen in the movie. Like, them interacting with each other. You know?
Yeah.
Even, not necessarily those 2 characters, but, like, people in the core. It just would have been more interesting. And this is the one that... I said I like how it fleshes out Tomar Ray as a character.
Yeah.
Also, at the end, this is when you see Parallax
Yeah, no,
those three...
It ends with the 3 aliens that fall into the pit.
The 3 hostages. Yeah, they're the hostages from the gunship. And during the movie, I even wrote in my movie notes, I'm actually going to reference, one of my first ones is, it's my second note. Who are these people killed on Riot, and was that supposed to be Parallax? Because in the final cut of the film, there's practically zero context given to that. We're just like, okay, we're on a random planet. Here's 3 people getting the life force sucked out of them. Whereas if just this one prequel issue had been put into the damn movie, it would have made way more sense.
Yeah.
In context.
Because it made it seem like we were going to see Abin Sur.
Yeah. Actually do something.
Yeah, when the movie started.
Yeah, and it's creative decisions like that make me go, what the fuck are you doing, DC?
And then the next story was a Kilowog story.
To build a better lantern.
Yes, to build a better lantern. Written by Peter J. Tomasi. Penciled by Carlos Ferreira. Inked by Silvio Spati. Colorist is Andrew Dahlhaus.
I really like this one, honestly. I didn't write many notes for most of these.
It's my favorite one.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's valid. But for most of these, I only have like a couple notes. And this one, Kilowog is pretty cool. But yeah, like I mentioned already in this episode, I'm not super familiar with like Green Lantern stuff. I don't really know the personalities and shit of the side characters, so him having his own little mini issue was really dope. I'm a sucker for the battle simulation gimmick.
Yeah.
I know it's cliche, I don't care. It's funny, it's dope. It works in this, it works in X-Men, it works in My Hero Academia. It's good shit. Okay?
So that's why I really, really like Kilowog. He's really, really harsh for a very, very good reason.
Yeah.
In the comics, they obviously get more chances to flesh him out.
Yeah.
And they flesh him out by him getting stuck in harsh situations with cadets, and then him, mourning dead cadets, and the other living cadets are like, wow, he
was right.
He was right, and he must feel awful anytime any lantern he trains dies.
Yeah. And
there are thousands of lanterns that die all the time, and so
that weighs on him.
Yeah, because he's trained, all of them.
Yeah, and I mean, to go with that, this issue also shows them mourning Abin Sur's death, which is something they show a little bit of in the movie, but not a ton. And I feel like it's honestly more impactful in this issue than it was in the, one scene it got in the movie.
I didn't know that he trained both Kilowog and Sinestro.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, that's weird. More Guardian gaslighting is what I wrote.
Yeah. They stay doing that, man. Guardians are some sketchy ass people.
This one did have the best core writing, of them interacting with each other.
Yeah, that's fair.
The recruits, the wonder that they had was perfect.
Yeah.
Genuinely, it's the best one yet. But the next one is called Being Human, and this one is actually written by Jeff Johns and Greg Berlanti. Artist was Jerry Ordway, and the colorist was Gabe Eltib.
This is the one I mentioned earlier in the comic talk where I said it shows stuff that happens in the movie.
No, so this one is set during the movie.
Is it set during?
So it's set during the analyzing scene. So when he is actually up on Oa and they're scanning him.
Oh, this is what's happening.
He's shaking and
yeah, because I know it showed him floating like that, and then in the background it's oh, are you saying I'm immature? And then him talking to his dad, all that stuff that we actually see in the movie. And I thought that was interesting, neat. I think it's kind of a cool choice to show a scene from the film from a different perspective in the prequel novel. My only thing is, why was that, and again, why was this issue
not
better than the scene in the movie? Yeah. Because it's literally a scene in the movie just focusing on a different part. And once again, it's better because the movie always focuses on the wrong things.
So, Tomar Ray is a real one for defending Hal.
Yeah, he was vouching for humanity, though.
Yeah, they've always had a
Gandhi
good...
and shit.
They've always had a good relationship.
Oh, that's good.
Because they're even, pacifists.
Okay.
The Tomar race.
Oh, yeah.
We see Guy Gardner.
Yeah,
With
I
Guy
put
Gardner.
that Guy Gardner cameo, possibly a setup that went nowhere.
I really liked it, and they even said that there was more. But
he was like, "There could be more. Give it time."
yeah,
and that was their way of saying,
but he
"Hey."
shut it off. Sinestro's dictating is showing.
Yeah,
I did say that.
and I like how most of this issue is just kind of told through their conversation.
Yeah,
And it does end by rehashing the flashbacks that were done better in the movie.
yeah,
Because, like, it's weird because for the analyzing scene, the comic focuses on a better part than the movie and ends up being a better scene, and then it rehashes one of the best parts from the movie and does it worse.
yeah.
It was just more impactful, I think, with the timing and the way it was implemented into the movie, that when they show his history in this one little issue, it just doesn't hit as hard, but it makes sense.
Just don't understand the creative decision behind a lot of the pacing and selection of
just with
of
this
where
movie
the focus was with the movie.
I don't know. The movie and comic and where they were taking everything and how they were executing it. I don't get
Even
their train of thought on a lot of it.
even this next story, I'm just not like a big fan
Yeah.
of. Emerald City. It's written by Donald Delane and Adam Schlagman. Penciler is Tyler Kirkham. Inker is just Bat, B-A-T-T, just Bat.
Hell yeah.
And then colorist was Randy Mayer. I had 2 notes on it.
I had 3.
An alright short story, and it felt purposeless.
Yep. I said barely anything happens. Nagila is kind of cool, I guess. Feels unnecessarily, certainly not integral to the movie.
Exactly.
It's just this character, and this is the one I mentioned earlier where I think she is actually in the film.
She is. All of them are.
Okay. But I actually semi-remember seeing her in the movie, unlike the other ones. But it's basically them introducing her. It's one of the 3-page one that's 2 short issues in one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really quick, just introducing her. Hey, she's cool. Next. Brief backstory and moving on. But like you said, it just feels kind of pointless.
Yeah, I just didn't understand
if she played like an important role in the movie, in the plot, I would understand it. Like, they also gave background for Abin Sur and Sinestro, but
yeah, they're
in the movie. Yeah, like they warranted it.
The next story is called The Chosen One. It's written by Jeff Johns and Michael Goldenberg, one of the writers of the film. The artists are Harvey Tolibed, Cliff Richards, Jeff Ordway, and then the colorists were Romulo Fajardo and Nathan Earing.
So, real quick, look through your listing. Did different artists work on each issue?
Yeah.
Okay, because honestly, one, it's surprisingly consistent.
Yeah.
Semi-consistent.
It's semi-consistent, but the art's never bad.
No. I think it's pretty freaking good, most of it. Honestly.
Again, the book's way better than the movie.
Yeah, ironically. When a movie's based on a book, it's normal to say that, but when you have a book made specifically for a movie and it ends up being better than the movie it's for, that's kind of an L.
Yeah.
That should be a red flag. Like, hey, maybe we're not making the best choices. But I think The Chosen One is honestly probably my favorite story in this. Yes, because it explains Sinestro's backstory and fleshes him out as a character. I feel like after knowing this information, because, you probably knew, if it's comic accurate at least, to mainline continuity, you probably already knew that story.
It's fairly accurate.
But, I didn't. So seeing that made some of his choices in the movie make a bit more sense.
Yeah, which, again, more stuff I wish was just in the movie.
Yeah, because Sinestro, in the beginning, he's trying to spread his message, basically saying, like, hey, the government is trying to oppress us, and then this police force comes in and is like, hey, we have the force to make you shut the hell up.
He was part of the police force.
Was he?
Yeah. And then he was like, this is bullshit. And it was like, guys, we all need to stop. I really wish this was just shown in the movie, like, Korrigar as a whole, because that planet is just a hellhole.
Is it?
Yeah, like, everything, it's just constant civil war, constant fighting all the time. That's, like, the whole of what Korrigar is. It also shows the inefficiencies of the Green Lantern Corps as a whole, like, really, really well.
Yeah.
Again, more stuff that should be in the movie, just showing how despite there being this grand number of them, they're surprisingly inefficient. And it's also just a great distillation of the many years of frustration that he has. That's, most of the reason why he always leaves is because he's just frustrated and wants to protect the universe in his own way.
Yeah,
and then just gets corrupted with the power of it.
Yeah. But what he says is, take a moment and look at what we are doing to our brothers and sisters. It is not they that have turned us against one another. It is the selfish and manipulative government leaders that have orchestrated this clash of classes to keep us weak. And then somebody says, your class wants to take away what ours has. And he says, no, we only wish the chance to provide for our families as well as you do. It is propaganda that has poisoned all of us and makes us afraid of our own kind.
Amen, brother.
And I'm like, hey, wait a minute.
Brother.
Wait a minute.
We should nail pipe bombs to each other.
I hate when the villain starts making a good point. Because, I know he's a bad guy and he ends up, a dictator or whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like, for this being his backstory, he probably actually had good intentions here. He
always has good intentions for the most part.
Sinestro is compelling to me, even as someone who isn't a Green Lantern fan, just because he was a Green Lantern. One of my notes for the movie was that it's ironic. He talks about, yellow being the color of weakness because, to have fear is to be weak or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's ironic knowing that he ends up using that fear and that power to kind of exploit the weaknesses of others instead. And so, at this point in his life, he was probably meaning well.
Yeah. The one thing that I guess I should say the whole thing of the Sinestro Corps is that it's kind of corrupted him to the point where now he's ruling with fear instead.
Yeah.
And that's why when his daughter ultimately kind of usurps him, she tries to turn it to more of a Green Lantern Corps, but yellow.
Okay.
Just a different source of power.
That makes sense. I just think it was really interesting to see his backstory and growth, and overall, like you said, more stuff in the book that should have just been part of the movie.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get into the next bit, which was basically in the movie, right? The secret origin of the Green Lantern Corps.
Yes. This is the one I said that they should have basically just integrated what they said here into the opening narration.
Was it not?
Of the movie. It wasn't exactly. They talk about stuff they never mentioned the sacred book of Oa or how the Guardians founded it. They just are hey, the Guardians founded the universe. They both explain the 3600 sectors part, but it doesn't even the opening narration doesn't even really explain that they're an intergalactic police force. And didn't mention who Parallax was or who Abin Sur was. And that's all just kind of implied in the beginning of the movie, which is cool because the beginning of the movie establishes a lot of that stuff well. But I feel like there's just parts of it, especially in the early bit, that, you could have just added that, 2 sentences to the narration scene, and we would have had a lot more context for what was going on.
Yeah, and this was written by Jeff Johns and Adam Schlagman, penciled by Fernando Dagnino, inked by Raul Fernandez, and the colorist was Peter Pintazis. More Guardian propaganda that excludes the Manhunters and the emotionlessness of the Guardians.
Oh, yeah. The lying bastards.
And some of the designs are ass, bro. Some of those designs suck.
For what?
For
the Lantern Corps?
Yeah, some of the aliens.
Yeah.
And then, just, I guess, final thoughts for the book as a whole. It ends with a New 52 Green Lantern.
Yeah,
the start of the New 52 Green Lantern.
God bless, 2011.
And it was good as fuck.
Yeah,
so
I've not read it.
Go read it.
But my final thoughts, I think the writing is solid. I think the art is pretty great throughout, even though it does switch up styles a bit. Not bad overall. Most of it should have been in the movie instead of the annoying extraneous scenes of Hector Hammond.
Yeah.
So, that's my take, is the prequel novel should have just been implemented into the movie, and Hector needs to be taken out of the movie, and then it would actually be a good movie. Is it as bad as a lot of people say it is? No. Is it good? No. But, Wonder Woman 84 still exists. Justice League 2017 still exists. And those are both worst DC movies, in my opinion. I would rather watch this again than watch Justice League 2017.
One thing
no cap
that I hope is good is the Green Lantern show, which we are going to talk about now in Future Talk. So I really, really hope that this is a multi-season project, because you've said that it's going to be starting with Alan Scott. I just really hope that they take their time and go like season by season, or even, 3 to 5 episode arcs with 45 minutes each.
It's said that the first season was going to be 10 episodes.
10 episodes? Yeah. Even if all 10 episodes are dedicated to Alan Scott, I would not be mad about that.
I wouldn't either.
Just have like a noir style. I know noir is typically set a little bit earlier than the 1930s and 40s, but slightly.
Usually like 20s, 30s.
Yeah, but I think it would still work with what Alan Scott is. He's Gotham's protector and around that time.
Yeah.
And he's got some wacky powers. He's forges the Star Heart himself.
Yep.
And I hope
Weak to wood.
Yeah, weak to wood. I hope that they include both Jade and Obsidian.
But I think there's a lot they could do with Alan Scott alone. I did find this article on Screen Rant talking about the upcoming show. Obviously, a lot of this stuff is rumored and hearsay and stuff from people just working on the project. But it says, unlike the 2011 Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds, the HBO Max series will not focus on Hal Jordan, but instead on multiple members of the Green Lantern Corps. Green Lantern will take place across multiple decades as they follow various heroes. While Green Lantern Season 1 was ordered for 10 episodes, it's had a slow process going forward because of COVID, and which is why it hasn't started filming. It says, despite the lack of updates, there are a number of confirmed details about Green Lantern Season 1. Lee Toland Krieger, a director on several Berlanti-produced shows, is officially set to direct the first 2 episodes. American Horror Stories' Finn Wittrock and Benedictine's Jeremy Irvine were previously cast as Green Lantern's Guy Gardner and Alan Scott, respectively. I don't know those actors.
Me either.
Green Lantern is also casting other notable DC Green Lantern Corps characters such as Jessica Cruz, Simon Baz, Kilowog, and Sinestro. It's also creating a new original character called Bree Jarda.
Interesting.
And it says, even though there have been delays, it might not be a bad thing. It's supposed to be really ambitious and the most expensive show they've produced because of the rich mythology. And it says, if successful, the HBO Max series could go for multiple seasons. While the actual movie they were going to do hasn't moved along for years, the HBO Max project will be where these characters get the most live action exposure for the next couple of years.
Okay.
Since the Green Lantern Season 1 finale is being written, it means once filming starts, they should be on track for a 2023 premiere.
God, I hope that gets multiple seasons.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
God, I hope that gets multiple seasons.
I'm not sure how old that article was, because I assume it's probably finished writing by now. I haven't heard any updates about filming, so I don't think they've started filming yet. I believe it is still in pre-production, and so
wouldn't surprise me.
It's probably going to be late 2023, early 2024 at the latest.
If it comes out.
If it comes out, yeah. Obviously, given the state of Warner Brothers Discovery, things are still really rocky. They fucking deleted the Batgirl footage, so who knows what's going to happen, frankly. Now, there's a rumor that Henry Cavill's made a reshoot appearance for the Black Adam movie after Ben Affleck did a reshoot for the Aquaman movie. Nobody knows what's going on, okay? We just gotta wait and see and hope the Green Lantern show comes out and hope it's good. But I'm excited because they're bringing in the newer generation like Simon and Jessica. However, I'm fucking pissed that they're leaving out the best Green Lantern, Jon Stewart. Yeah. I will die on that hill. He is the best Green Lantern. No, I don't read Green Lantern comics. I don't care. Fight me on it.
I think that having John in there would be important just to show the responsibility with the whole Xanshi situation.
It literally basically said they're going to have everybody in it except for Hal is going to be on the back burner, John's not going to be in it, and there's been no mention of Kyle at all.
So is John not going to be in it at all?
I don't think so. I don't think Hal is even going to be in it. I think he'll probably be maybe referenced.
All of them should be referenced or mentioned to some regard.
Yeah, I would love that. Now, if they are saving that and they do a season 2 where Jon Stewart becomes the focus of one of the arcs, count me in for that shit. But I just really hope they don't permanently shelve Jon Stewart, because I love him. He's always been my Green Lantern personally, because I think my earliest exposure to Green Lantern was the Justice League animated series.
Yeah.
And Jon Stewart's the Green Lantern in that, and he's awesome in that show. So honestly,
that was probably my first exposure to
yeah,
Green Lantern
because
as well.
I grew up knowing Jon Stewart as Green Lantern. And so when I started seeing Hal Jordan Green Lantern content, I was like, why the fuck did they make him white?
Yeah.
And then I realized, wait a minute, these are just two different characters. And then I learned their stories.
That there's like 10 of them.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, well, John's still the coolest. So, moving on.
Let's go ahead and get into current talk.
Yeah.
What are you watching, reading, playing?
I finally finished, after procrastinating like I do all my reading, finished the 1975 Inhuman series written by Doug Moench, and it was awesome. The final issue was a crossover with my boy, the Hulk, who we talked about last episode of the main podcast.
Oh, there we go.
Hell yeah. And now we're talking about Green Lantern. We're hitting all our green boys right now, but we gotta save Green Arrow for later, okay? He's too precious.
Exactly. We're gonna get to that with maybe a deeper dive later on.
Green Arrow will get to you, boy.
Maybe like a Green Arrow month or week.
Oh, I would love that. But I finished that, and so I started the 1998 series, the 1998 Inhuman series.
Wasn't Neil Gaiman attached to
No.
an Inhumans project at one point?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Well,
unless it was one of the newer post 2010.
I don't fucking know, man.
Post Terrigen Bomb or whatever.
But I have no fucking clue, man.
I'm just going through their reading order right now, and so I've read the first 2 issues of the 1998 Inhuman series, and then after that, I'm gonna have to start going into the actual events and stuff where they show up, because they don't really get solo series.
Not at all.
Which they deserve, but whatever. After that, I'm gonna try and finish up Immortal Hulk, which I'm only a couple volumes away from finishing. I think I said that last episode as well when we were covering the Hulk.
You've been
I have not
2 volumes away from finishing that for
2 months.
3 months.
Yeah, because once again, I procrastinate all my reading. But I'm going to finish that, and I'm going to finish Jason Aaron's Thor, and then after that,
You're not finished with Jason Aaron's Thor?
Not the full thing. I finished the whole Gore arc before Love and Thunder, but there's still a couple volumes after that before Mighty Thor.
I'm reading through the Ultimate Universe, and that's taxing.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. You got screenshots of the reading list, and it's fucking 12 of them. And you just gotta cross them off as you go, and I'm like, could not be me. I've just heard too much about the Ultimate Universe where I'm like, I'm not gonna put myself through that. I will read Ultimate Spider-Man at some point.
I watched the first 20 minutes of House of the Dragon. That was pretty alright. I'm excited to watch all that.
Yeah. You said you were a fan of
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Well, when it was good. I mean, even through to the end, I watched it episode by episode.
But you preferred the early seasons.
Yeah, when it was based off of a book.
Which
all of this should, in theory, be based off of Blood and Fire or something like that.
Yeah.
Or Fire and Blood.
Yeah, I can't remember which book it is, but it's supposed to all be based.
It's the prequel, history book.
Okay. And, I mean, all the reviews that I've heard people talking about it, on Twitter and shit, have been positive. I'm never read Game of Thrones, never seen it, never read anything George R.R. Martin's done. I'd like to maybe at some point read it. Don't really care to watch it, though. So.
Yeah. I mean, I have all the books, so I'll let you read at least the first one. The first one is pretty alright. If anything, you can log into my Audible. I have the first book on audiobook.
Oh, hell yeah.
It has, sword clings and shit. It's pretty cool.
Fuck yeah.
But I guess let's go ahead and wind this thing up. Yeah, our socials. You can reach us on several things. You can find us on TikTok at LTAC Podcast, on Twitter at LTAC Podcast. You can email us at letstalkaboutcomics@gmail.com. And if you have any business inquiries, you can reach us at letstalkaboutcomicsbusiness@gmail.com. Once again, if you want to sponsor the show, it's letstalkaboutcomicsbusiness@gmail.com. Our personal Twitters is at NachoPepev for mine. It's at NachoPpev. And Spencer's is
at Hippie Spider-Man, HIPPIE Spider-Man. And don't forget, you can always shoot us a tweet, DM, email with a comment, question, anything, and we'll try to read it on a future podcast when we start getting it. We can also be found on Spotify now. We are working on getting onto Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and other things. But for now, we are on YouTube and Spotify, and we plan to be doing episodes weekly of the main podcast, as well as the other stuff we do on our side, like the She-Hulk reviews and full series reviews, other stuff we will be doing in the future.
Yeah, share with your friends and family. And again, the podcast will be on Wednesdays, and the She-Hulk review should be on Fridays. But thank you so much for listening. My name is Peyton.
I am Spencer.
And this has been Let's Talk About Comics. Bye.
Thanks for listening.